In today's episode, we talk about what to do when you're feeling like a failure. Because believe me, we've all been there. So in the last episode, or the last article, depending on how you're consuming this, I shared how much I made after 30 days of pursuing this business, and it was definitely not a lot. In fact, it was embarrassingly little. And you could read or listen to that podcast, just go back an episode or go to my website. Now, I can't lie that after a month of doing work and getting paid so little, it was tough to stomach. There were days following where I got up and I honestly just felt like a failure. I was like, why am I doing this? I just wanted to put the whole thing aside and work on something else, something that would provide me better results more quickly. Now, this is a big mistake, but we'll talk about that later. And I'm sure that if you're reading this article, you've probably felt like a failure at some point in your life, right? You failed a test, couldn't get a job, tanked a project, and you just feel terrible. You can't believe that you were capable of just royally screwing up what's been given to you. All you want to do is really just crawl under a rock, separate yourself from the world, and just be forgotten. Inevitably, though, we bounce back. And for some people, it's different, but generally, it takes some time. This time, though, is essentially wasted because it sets us back a month or a week or a year, and we delay our success further simply because we have a feeling that prevents us from moving forward. And while your feelings are certainly real to you, they may not reflect reality. And in order to minimize this delay of wallowing and throwing yourself a pity party, I want to help you stop feeling like that because I felt like that as well. And I wanted to tell you 3 things that I did that helped me stop feeling like such a failure. And those 3 things were acknowledge your feelings, listen to similar stories, and persevere in your task. So, first of all, acknowledging your feelings. Now, the first thing you're going to need to do when you feel like a failure is take the time to acknowledge that you feel this way. This acknowledgement should lead you to acceptance, right? Don't let yourself spiral further by feeling like a failure and then feeling worse because you're feeling like a failure, right? You're feeling bad because you're feeling bad, and it could really just spiral out of control. And you shouldn't think that way. It's okay to be a failure, and you can own that. I think so much of how we grow up is avoiding and ignoring failure, right? Like, we don't want to be the person who lost. We don't want to be the person who just tanked the interview or who lost all their money, right? We don't want to be failures. But I think it's really just coming face to face and acknowledging to yourself that it's okay to be a failure. It's okay to screw up because you have other opportunities. Acknowledgement to yourself, though, is good, but I think it's only a half step. I really believe that acknowledging and talking to someone you trust, like a close friend or a family member, is a great step forward as well. Talking out and confessing your feelings does wonders in simply just getting the negativity out of your mind and allows your friends to share in your brokenness or your burdens. Be prepared, though, for advice you may not need. Most of the time when you share your problems, people want to help. And in this moment, maybe that's not what you need. And you can do this one of 2 ways, right? You can handle that one of 2 ways. You can, prior to sharing your pain, tell yourself that feedback that you get in this interaction from this person you trust comes from a place of respect and care. They're only giving you that feedback because they want you to do better. And so you can essentially just be prepared for any advice that comes and just know that whether or not it helps you in that moment, the act of them giving advice helps you understand that they care about you. The other way to deal with this is to just tell them, be very vocal about why you're sharing this. Just tell them that, hey, I don't need any advice about this. I don't really need a way to fix this. I just want to tell you something that sucks. And you don't have to give me any advice, but if you do, that's great. But you can just tell me that sucks and we can move on. And that'll at least give you that opportunity to vocalize what you want and allows your friend or your trusted family member or, confidant, whoever that is, to really understand how to help best. Because sometimes helping isn't actually doing anything, it's just listening. So that's the first thing you should do. First, acknowledge your feelings to yourself, accept that it's okay to fail, and talk to somebody about it as well. Doesn't have to be anything formal, just talk to them. Now, second, listen to similar stories. Now, I think this one is really powerful and one that probably helps me the most. So after you acknowledge your feelings of failure, go out and find similar stories of success from people who have been in your position. A great place to do this is YouTube. Literally, there are millions and millions of stories of people who have been in the same position as you are and have experienced similar failures. Really, any social media platform will have this ability, right? You can go out and seek the stories of people that failed and that achieved success. For me, it was great to look up other bloggers and YouTubers and see that they only started to make profit years after they put out their first pieces of content. So me failing after 30 days gave me great comfort. I'm not supposed to be succeeding at this time. It's going to take some work. Additionally, it helped to go early into their channels and see how many views they had and what kind of engagement they had. So for you, whatever that be, whatever that may be, you want to lose weight, you want to get a job, go find people that have, talked about their early failures when they were going out and doing this, what they tweaked to make them successful. And hopefully you see that with enough perseverance and just determination, they were able to get what they want, right? And it's really that ability to look out early into what somebody's doing that gives you that energy to say, I'm going to keep going. I feel very confident. What I would do with those YouTubers is I would look at their early stuff and the quality was terrible. The reach was terrible. And it just fueled me to keep going. The other thing that helped was going back and actually listening to my first podcast. If you go back and listen to it, you'll hear me say that before starting out, I am expecting to fail. And I would tell myself that I'm going to give it a year before I saw any substantial results. Hearing this in my own voice was incredibly comforting and certainly helped me to put myself at ease. And I would recommend doing that in a few different ways. Before starting a major endeavor or a goal, sit down, record or write down some of your thoughts on failure and what you potentially could encounter and how you want to respond to it. For example, if you're starting in sales and you're making cold calls, you could write down something like, I plan on making 200 cold calls and will make sales on only 2 of them. And you think about that, you're going to be at like 130 and you haven't made any calls. And at least you're going to be able to say, hey, I've got 70 more that I can keep doing. And what I hope is that in the middle of that, you can see that you're not getting results. You can tweak your process and you can start to say, hey, this isn't working for 130 times. Maybe I tweak something and I hit the rest of the 70 in a different way. Now, this is just an example, but your statement should do essentially 2 things for you. Set a goal, a tangible goal before you actually call it quits, and provide an area of what success looks like. This will help you keep going even when you get midway and haven't seen the results you're looking for. You still got the rest of the journey to go, and you still have the opportunity to get the results you want. Now, lastly, persevere in your task. When you've moved slightly out of the pit of your despair by doing the 2 previous actions, you need to make the decision to keep going with what you're doing. Because the one surefire way to fail is to quit. But continuing is hard, right? You don't feel good about wanting to keep going, right? You feel sad, you feel upset, which is why I hope you do those 2 previous steps before you get to this one. You need to start building energy, right? You need to start talking to your friends about failures. You need to listen to success stories, and you need to really start to build some of that energy behind you. And I don't advocate in getting to a point where you're just really, really gung-ho about it again, because that probably will take a little bit of time, right? What you need to be able to do is at least motivate yourself enough to get back in front of what you wanted to do and keep going. Despite limited results or limited progress, just getting back on the horse is a huge step forward. This is the point, though, where I warn you about pivoting. I talked about earlier in the introduction of this, where I had the desire to want to get into something that would be, more, it would give me better results in a shorter amount of time. And that's a big mistake, right? You can make small tweaks. Small tweaks are very important. But if you completely pivot, you lose the opportunity to improve, right? So let's take the example of the cold calls again. I'm at 200, or I want to make 200 calls. I hit 130 and I've got 70 more. A big problem would be for me to then say, all right, 130 didn't work. I'm going to pivot to writing blogs about this sales, about this product, and hopefully get content there. And then after you put out 10 blogs, you say nobody's paying attention, and you pivot again. And you'll continually get in this idea of, I'm going to chase another thing that should get me more results because I heard that somebody else gets results that way. And because of that, you'll never be able to actually hone your ability and strengthen your skill set. So for me, I could be blogging and nobody's reading my blog. I've got less than 20 people reading my blog. Great. What does that mean? Well, then I think I'm going to start doing only the podcast. I won't write. And then if the podcast doesn't work, I'm going to go to Instagram. And then if Instagram doesn't give me results, I'm going to go to LinkedIn. So on and so forth into forever. So you really need to have that mental fortitude and that commitment to not want to pivot too quickly. So set yourself a goal. And I suggest it's a bit of a long-term one. For me, it's the year. I'm not going to pivot. I'm going to continue what I do until I hit a year. And if nothing happens there, then maybe I am going to shift a little bit. This can be applied to any situation or any goal that you have. Tweak and improve your process. Find out what's not working and adjust it to fit a better practice. Go for these small changes rather than the massive pivots so that you can test out the specific things that are working and that'll produce the most results. Small changes in the short term produce big changes in the long term. Now, these recommendations are for those who may experience a great deal of failure and the feelings that they just don't want to go on, they want to quit, and they're having a hard time picking themselves back up. But if you don't need to go through all of these three, that's great. In fact, you may only need to talk to someone, or you may just need to listen to some stories to get back on the horse and keep going. I say do what works best for you, because while we all experience failure, it affects us in different ways. Always remember, though, the only way to achieve success is to persevere in the face of failure. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay proper.